Do you remember that night?
They called. It said that Stacy hadn't got to work.
There's already an aerial search going on.
They found Stacy on the side of a road and a bunch of wildflowers.
Instead of going to Stacy's wedding, now we're going to Stacy's memorial.
She's buried in her wedding dress.
She was really excited about getting married. She really loved Jimmy.
She told me that she wasn't very excited to get married because she was sleeping with a black guy named Rodney. Wow, you need to be careful with this.
They found that Rodney Reed's DNA is identical to the DNA recovered from Stacy Stites' body.
Am I being charged with something?
If Rodney Reed did have a relationship with Stacy Stites, doesn't that complicate your case?
He was a black male having sex with a white girl.
I knew my son had been railroaded. I got to fight these people to save my son's life.
Free Rodney Reed! Free Rodney Reed!
Bastrop, it's a typical small Texas town on the Colorado. It's a town that represents a wide swath of what Texas is all about. Certainly the churches, football on Friday nights.
All Bears, Bastrop led 76-9. That is not a typo, folks.
I grew up here. My dad grew up here. My grandparents grew up here. Louisiana has a town named after the same guy that's called Bastrop, but we say Bastrop.
I'm a fifth-generation Bastropian. Bastrop is known as the home of the Lost Pines.
It's an old town, and there's a lot of history. Bastrop was founded by immigrants from the southern United States. They brought enslaved African Americans with them.
In the days of segregation, we as African Americans provided jobs for one another. We had our own barbershops, restaurants. The class of 1970 was the first fully integrated class in Bastrop High School.
In the mid-90s, even at that period of time, the African Americans and the whites were, I think, separated in a lot of ways.
Interracial dating in Bastrop in the 90s existed, but it was something that was hidden and it was dangerous. We've come a long way in some instances, but yet and still, justice is slow in Bastrop County for African Americans.
This morning, 19-year-old Stacy Lee Stites was reported missing.
Family members came from all corners of Texas to comfort Carol Stites. She lost her youngest, Stacy Lee.
She had her plans, and now somebody's taken that away.
I think you just about got it.
Where am I?
You're in the far end there.
Yes, yeah.
Grab it, take hold.
There you go.
Yep.
It's been 24 years
Yes.
since you lost your daughter, Stacy. Tell me a little bit about Stacy. Stacy was your youngest of 5.
I found out that I was pregnant with Stacy, and I had cancer at the same time. And so I put off any drugs or any chemicals to keep that child alive until I had her, because that soul was more precious to me than mine. From the time she was able to move, she was up and at 'em. She was like the white tornado. That's exactly what they called her when she was little. She was into everything and did everything and friends with everybody.
I was friends with Stacy in high school. We were involved in some church groups and sports together.
She was just kind of like a sunflower, sunshine. She was funny. She was always cracking jokes. She didn't really take a lot of things seriously. She was always in the moment. She was looking for what everybody does, young love.
Go away.
Stacy lost her father as a child, and apparently it had quite an impact on her. According to friends and family, she seemed to lose her way for a while.
She ended up pregnant.
She was 15.
Yes, devastating. It took 2 of my daughters to get me in a room upstairs by myself to let me know what had gone on.
She did decide to give the baby up for adoption.
Every year, Smithville has their jamboree. That's where Stacy met Jimmy Fennell.
He was on duty at the festival, you know, security. And they got to talking, and they talked, and they talked, and they talked. Pretty soon, he was hanging around the house, and they talked and talked.
What did you think of him?
I like Jimmy. He was raised in the church that I was raised in. He's had the same values that I was raised with. I thought he was heaven sent. This guy was here, and it was just about everything that I wanted in a son-in-law.
She was more outgoing, he was a little more conservative, but I thought he was good for her.
That's the picture of her and him. That was at his graduation when he became a policeman.
Jimmy began working for the Giddings Police Department.
Stacy was very excited about their relationship.
Stacy moved in with Jimmy in his apartment upstairs, and Carol lived in the same building downstairs, catty corner to Stacy and Jimmy's apartment.
They moved in together and they said, we're engaged, we're getting married. So that was just about, okay, at least you're getting married. You're not going to live in sin, as I would think of it.
It was going to be a big wedding. She was so excited. She had planned every detail.
Here's the thing for the Georgetown Church of Christ, the fees and the use of the church facilities.
Yeah. She was wanting to make more money for her wedding. She went into HED's grocery company, and they gave her a job in the produce department. And so Stacy had to be at work early in the morning.
She was working hard. Every 2 weeks when she got paid, she was making a payment on the wedding dress.
There was excitement in the beginning, but I think as every day kind of ticked by, it was less and less. I know that it was definitely stressful for her just because she had to work and come home, and she was expected to do laundry, clean. For a 19-year-old, that's kind of a big transition.
Does she share any concerns?
She didn't share any concerns. That she was really excited about getting married. She really loved Jimmy.
You were a little concerned, you were a little emotional before the wedding.
Stress.
And that you cried a couple of times. You thought that Jimmy wasn't quite as...
I was the mother, and Stacy was my daughter, and I expected him to perform the way I wanted him to.
My name is Athena, and we were besties, high school. This is going back in time. Oh, wow. Stacy called me and told me that she's getting engaged and getting married. And Stacy never sounded like a giddy girl in love. She sounded giddy about her wedding and planning her wedding and making things for her wedding. But she never talked about Jimmy.
I think that she started seeing sides of Jimmy, that he was very possessive, and it was kind of his way or no way. And I don't know that she was necessarily comfortable with that, so I think that they started butting heads.
Tell me, Carol, when you got the call.
HED's called. It said that Stacy hadn't got to work.
That's the first inkling that something is wrong.
We didn't know what to do. We made flyers and started walking door to door, hoping that we could find her alive.
Tell me about that night before April 22nd. Do you remember that night?
It was normal, everyday evening stuff. This voice that I've heard all my year, and it makes me sound a little nuts, and I call it the Holy Spirit, all my life that I've had guide me. It said, you did a good job, and now your job is done. How do you tell your daughter that the thoughts in your mind was, if you was to die today, I can never be more proud of you? How do you tell that to someone?
We know that Jimmy Fennell was at Little League practice from around 5 in the evening on April 22nd, 1996. At around 8 o'clock p.m., Carol saw Jimmy come home from Little League practice.
Carol actually saw Jimmy and Stacy meet outside and have sort of an embrace outside her window. Of course, she lives downstairs. And she saw Stacy walking with Jimmy, laughing and joking as they went up the stairs to their apartment.
The last words out of her mouth was, Mom, I love you. And I said, I know you do.
The narrative that Jimmy provides is that the two of them are basically home for a good part of the evening, and they're sort of getting along great, and that then she goes to bed, he stays up and watches some TV.
We knew from Jimmy, her fiance, Stacy Stites left her home at approximately 3 a.m. like she always did, to go to a 3:30 a.m. shift at the H-E-B to work in produce. She drove Jimmy's truck, as she often did. Her normal route to work was on Highway 21 through Bastrop.
Andrew Cardenas is a co-worker of hers, and he's there in the parking lot waiting for Stacy to arrive. Stacy never does. And Stacy's not one to be late for work. And that's the first inkling that something is wrong.
They found a red truck in Bastrop by the high school. At about 5:23 that morning, a patrol officer had come across it. He didn't know that it had any relevance to anything. He called it into dispatch just because it was at the high school. It didn't register as stolen.
He was advised that the truck was owned by Fennell. He basically was able to look inside the truck. It was securely locked. The ignition was intact. There was nothing overtly wrong that he knew about, and so he just went on his way and continued his patrol.
Then as darkness shifts to daybreak, that innocent-looking truck becomes a little more suspicious.
Roughly an hour later, around about 6:45 in the morning, Carol Stites gets a phone call from the grocery store wondering where Stacy is. She hasn't shown up.
Stacy was always on time.
Did you suspect something was wrong immediately?
No, I thought maybe his truck broke down or something. I immediately turned around and called Jimmy. I said, Jimmy, Stacy didn't make it to H-E-B's. And he says, okay, I'll be down in just a minute.
He's getting dressed, he's tucking in his shirt. She notices that he looks like he's just woke up. She grabbed the keys, she handed them to Jimmy so that he could go look for Stacy.
My name is David Board. I worked as a detective for the Bastrop Police Department at the time of Stacy Stites' disappearance. I received a call of a missing person. Stacy Stites had left Giddings, Texas, and was en route to work at H-E-B in Bastrop and never made it.
When the call comes in that Stacy's didn't make it to work, then dispatch and the patrol officer had sort of a uh-oh moment, and they went back.
Her pickup truck was at the Bastrop High School, so I responded there. I remember there was a belt. A part of a leather belt was located outside the truck.
Now we've got a missing person, and we've got the car that she was supposedly driving that morning. So we're gonna put these together. They impound the truck.
Once Jimmy Fennell, Stacy's fiance, unlocks that truck for investigators, they ask him to take a look and point out anything that seems unusual.
Detective Ed Sommel of the Bastrop Police Department stated that Jimmy pointed out a piece of green-colored plastic. Jimmy stated that it was part of a glass that Stacy drank out of, and that it was not in the truck broken like that before. Jimmy then pointed out one of the tennis shoes that was lying on the passenger floorboard. Jimmy pointed out that one of Stacy's earrings was on the passenger side floorboard.
There were body fluids in the floorboard of that truck. Didn't really know exactly what it was or what caused it, but it was unusual. There was evidence of a struggle at the truck. We suspected foul play.
The police chief questions Jimmy and says that he's visibly shaken and very concerned, but not in a state of panic. Then Jimmy identifies that belt found outside the truck as Stacy's, and that's when he breaks down. Then he goes home to be with Stacy's mom, Carol, to wait.
Since her truck was found, she was nowhere around. The Texas Ranger, Rocky Wardlow, was contacted. We went up in the helicopter, searched all over Bastrop.
What was going through your mind, Crystal, all day?
Hoping that we could find her alive, but still have dread.
Stacy's body isn't discovered until about 3:30 that afternoon, alongside of a dirt road kind of out in the county. There was a fella who was out there for an appointment, and he had stopped to pick his wife wildflowers because it was the spring in Texas, and then he found her body.
It had to be devastating.
It was awful. It was awful.
And then, as unbelievable as it may sound in this small town, just 2 weeks after Stacy's body is discovered, a second young woman is found dead in the woods.
The citizens of Bastrop were believing they may have a serial killer on the loose.
They found Stacy on the side of a road and a bunch of wildflowers.
It had to be devastating.
It was.
It was awful. It was awful. My memory of that is my mom just sitting in her chair, just, my baby, my baby, my baby, my baby.
We had a bridal shower just a couple of days before she died. And all the bridal stuff was still sitting on my dining room table.
How did you even process that?
The pastor from the church is the one who told me, and my question to him was, how could God let this happen? Things happen. You know, this is the devil's world.
When the DPS crime lab arrives, this is an impressive vehicle that comes down this dirt road in the middle of a pine forest. Exiting were photographers, serologists, physical evidence collection people. This was quite a unique crew to show up in this little sleepy county of Bastrop.
Stacy's body is kind of almost 10 to 12 feet off of the road in the high grass. She's laying on her back, and in between her legs there's her name tag for the HEB. And she is missing a shoe from the foot that we found the shoe in the truck. That seems to be the shoe that she's missing. The interesting thing about that is her sock that's revealed underneath is completely clean, so it doesn't look like Stacy walked to this location. It looks like she was carried to this location and placed, meaning dumping a body.
The way she was clothed, what she'd been doing, how her zipper was broken from being pulled apart, about all of the things that told us this was a classic rape case.
There was what appeared to be the mate of that black woven belt that was found in the high school parking lot, laying on the side of the road. So this scene is now tying to the high school parking lot.
It was a braided leather belt that had been busted. It would appear to me that it was leather, and that for it to break, it would have had to have a tremendous amount of force pulling on it. It was enough force on that belt around Stacy Stites' neck to kill her. Stacy Stites was strangled to death.
The only prints that they were able to lift from the inside of the truck that were readable prints were Stacy's and Jimmy's. And yet, since that was his truck, his fingerprint being in that truck is not evidence of him perpetrating the crime.
Jimmy Fennell was absolutely considered as a suspect. Anytime a woman is murdered, the significant other is and should be one of the prime suspects.
Around the time of Stacy's death, another woman by the name of Mary Ann Alt was also found dead. A man named David Lawhon had confessed to her killing, and there was some talk that he might have been responsible for Stacy's death.
We knew about that case, and I know that it was definitely a consideration that there might have been a serial murderer up there.
There are some similarities between the Stacy Stites case and the Mary Ann case. Mary Ann Alt is a little bit older than Stacy Stites, but in both a truck is used, and in both a body is dumped, and in both a earring is an important piece of evidence.
David Lawhon had bragged about killing Stacy, and so David Lawhon became a suspect in Stacy Stites' murder. However, David Lawhon was excluded pretty quickly because the DNA from Stacy's murder did not match.
David Lawhon is convicted of that second murder, but still no arrests in Stacy's case, and her devastated family is mourning her loss.
Stacy's funeral was there in Bastrop. It was standing room only.
The police set up a camera, a secret camera, to provide surveillance of the ceremony that's taking place. They're trying to surreptitiously capture people's emotions, people's reactions.
I remember walking around and thinking, did the person that killed Stacy, did they come to her funeral?
There are very few murders in Bastrop, a sleepy little southeast Texas town.
Broken wings.
And this one to be a young girl who went to high school, played sports, was active in her church. This would be the last person most people would believe would be involved in a crime.
There are 32 HEB employees from Austin helping out at this Bastrop store, a small favor they feel for fellow workers trying to cope with a traumatic experience.
Very sad for what happened.
Almost all of the more than 100 workers from this store are attending the memorial service for Stacy Stites.
At the church, at the funeral, the police placed 2 camcorders in strategic locations. The camcorder that is placed in a box with a hole cut in the box, it's placed like that so that you can't tell that it's a video recording device. 4 days after this crime, they don't have any direct leads on anybody. And so they're looking for anything that seems out of the ordinary, anything that looks like it might point to a suspect.
We were supposed to be getting together for a wedding in a few weeks. Instead of going to Stacy's wedding, now we're going to Stacy's memorial.
It was devastating to all of us, including Jimmy. He was definitely a man who had just lost his fiancée.
Jimmy went over to the coffin, and he had the wedding ring in his hand, and he put the wedding ring on her finger.
Goodbye.
Yeah, told her goodbye. It was devastating. And she's buried with that wedding ring, and she's buried in her wedding dress. And she worked hard for that wedding dress, and we all decided that that's what she should be buried in.
There was a graveside service, and what seemed unusual to me at that service was just that Jimmy, her fiance, really didn't show a lot of emotion at all.
Of course, everybody grieves in their own way. Now today, Stacy's mother and sisters say they have always believed that Jimmy was innocent. But at the time, Stacy's sister Crystal was so concerned about Jimmy's behavior that she hired a private investigator and even made a list of his questionable behavior.
You kind of want to suspect the people nearest to her, and then you try to figure it out in your head of what happened and how did it happen. But once we knew that she had been raped, our emotions were like, it had to be somebody else.
We did not believe that Jimmy had hurt Stacy at all.
In fact, Jimmy himself even later talked about the pain he was feeling over Stacy's death.
It's going to be with me forever. I'll think about it, it'll be there. There's no way it's going to go away.
So Karen Blakely was the lead DNA analyst who processed the crime scene. She makes a telephone call to Rocky Wardlow, the lead investigator on the case. Karen Blakely told him the semen was deposited at the same time as the death. Essentially, she told him the rape happened at the same time Stacy died. It meant that Rocky Wardlow had the smoking gun. It meant that all he needed to do was to find the depositor of the semen. He is simply looking for a DNA match.
Investigators obtained reference samples from 28 men who had some part in Stacy Stites' life. Acquaintances, friends, co-workers.
Not one of them is a match, not even her fiancé, Jimmy Fennell. So the police are wondering, is there some other explanation? What if Stacy had been cheating? Could that be a motive for Jimmy Fennell to kill her?
It was hard having the finger pointed at you. It was hard for them saying that, yeah, you killed Stacy, your fiance, that you did it because of these reasons, you know. But, you know, I kept in my mind that I didn't do it.
Bastrop County Sheriff's Office.
There's a recorded phone conversation in which a woman calls in anonymously and claims her son was having an affair with Stacy.
I think Stacy was having a liaison. Okay, I'm almost positive of it.
I mean, we've all kind of assumed that.
Who has a motive for this?
Well, at this point, the boyfriend does.
That's right.
That's the prime suspect. The person that we're trying to find is a liaison. For the longest time, we've had our suspicions. Okay?
The woman refuses to provide her son's name, although subsequently he was identified and he was ruled out.
And as the call continues, you can hear the investigators' frustration. It's been 4 months, and this investigation is going nowhere.
See, at this point, we're stymied. We've hit a brick wall. I have to look at Stacy Stites' mom at least once a week, every day, in the face, and it makes me not want to answer the phone because I know it's her, and I know she wants me to tell her something, and I have nothing to tell her.
We can see that Rocky Wardlow continues to look at Jimmy Fennell through 1996 as his investigation continues to go on. We can see that because he gives him a polygraph test.
One of the questions asked Jimmy was, did you strangle Stacy? Jimmy answered he did not. Another question asked Jimmy was, were you involved in the death of Stacy Stites? Jimmy Fennell stated again he was not. The examiner determined that Jimmy was deceptive in these two answers. Jimmy, in defense of himself, said that he was emotional, that all he could visualize in his mind was her lying deceased in the casket.
So it didn't concern you at all that he seemed to be deceptive on the polygraph test?
No.
Nah, I think we would talk about it and think that he was just upset.
I think he felt bad that he didn't get up and take her to work that day. And then you feel like if I had been there, this wouldn't have happened.
Right.
What was it that led them to eliminate Jimmy Fennell?
Because of the logistic problems. Jimmy's truck was found in Bastrop, and he was home in Giddings, which is some 30 miles away. And so that was the problem, is that law enforcement could never make it make any sense that Jimmy had any involvement in this, because they couldn't figure out how he ever could have gotten back home.
Unless he had a friend who might have given him a ride.
The investigators, the Texas Rangers, explored the possibility that somehow maybe someone had helped him, and they could never find anything or anybody that credibly could have helped him. They looked at the mileage on the different patrol vehicles there at Giddings PD where he worked to see if there was any of those that were off, and there weren't. They looked at whether there were bus fares for people that night, and there weren't any. They looked at cab fares to see if there was some way he could have taken a cab.
Jimmy Fennell himself has always insisted that he is innocent.
They thoroughly vetted all the evidence they had, and they cleared him.
It was only after they matched the DNA to somebody that they dropped Jimmy as a suspect.
Another woman is violently attacked, and this woman lives. And her case is about to change everything.
I'm one of the investigators on the Stacy Stites murder. Do you even know who she is?
Stacy's murder goes unsolved for nearly a year. The cops are ostensibly looking at Jimmy and maybe in a couple other directions, but nothing's really happening.
1996 was an election year. Richard Hernandez won the position of the Bastrop County Sheriff. Hernandez announced that he would solve the murder of Stacy Stites within 6 months of taking office.
Richard Hernandez seizes on the Stites case, and this investigation begins to speed up. Wardlow is looking for a DNA match. That's the smoking gun.
Linda Schluter was another woman who was about 19 who had been abducted and beaten.
Linda Schluter was at this payphone in Bastrop, and there's a man who's kind of bothering her.
And he picked up the payphone next to the payphone I was on. He proceeded to ask me if he could get a ride. And he said, "I'm gonna freeze to death." I felt bad. So I said, "Fine, I'll give you a ride." Once we took a ride on Main Street, he started to get out, and he got back in really quick, and he said, "Don't I get a hug?" And the next thing I know, he grabs me by the back of my hair with his left hand and proceeds to slam my face into my steering wheel.
There's an incredible fight happening in the car. She basically gets away, and this guy takes her car and drives and then sort of crash abandons it somewhere down the road.
Deputies arrived, took her into Bastrop. They photographed her injuries. They took a statement.
I described the man that I gave a ride to. The police automatically knew who he was. They presented 6 African Americans on a piece of paper. This is the one who attacked me. The police told me that his name was Rodney Reed.
Mr. Reed was arrested, and later he was released without posting a bond. He was just released.
The way in which Linda Schluter was attacked really lent itself to the police narrative of how Stacy Stites was attacked.
Rodney Reed surfaced as a suspect wholly and exclusively because he tried to abduct Linda 6 months after Stacy's murder, and a detective told the ranger about the case, and the ranger said, "Oh my God, that sounds like the Stites case."
Rocky Wardlow, the lead investigator from the Texas Rangers, he's wondering, do we have Rodney Reed's DNA on file? And it turns out they did have a sample of Rodney Reed's DNA in the system.
Because he had been involved with a woman in 1995 in some sort of a relationship.
and she alleged that Rodney Reed had sexually assaulted her in her apartment. I responded and conducted a crime scene investigation.
She ultimately declines to pursue charges against Reed, and that case is kind of dropped, but the police retain this biological evidence.
Texas Ranger Rocky Wardlow, he requested that the serologist take the DNA off a washcloth and various other items collected in October 1995 and compare it to the DNA collected off Stacy Stites' body.
It was a match. They found that Rodney Reed's DNA is identical to the DNA evidence recovered from Stacy's body.
My name is Sandra Reed, and I am Rodney Reed's mother. Richard Hernandez, the sheriff, and the city police came to the house, and I knew Richard before he even became sheriff, and they were looking for Rodney.
Ends up confirming to Corey that right around 2020, Eric had created an estate, and that his sister Katie was in charge of. That and the executor. He makes his sons the beneficiary of the trust. He puts the house in the trust. And that's when those words of, "It's not your home," came out. And Corey's like, "Is my house. I've lived here for 10 years. You know, what are you talking about?" Amy told authorities that Corey punched her in the face and the neck. Corey is then arrested and charged with assault. She ends up pleading no contest, but she is found guilty of assault. To think this is happening 2 days after Eric's death, and then these two. Families have to see each other again at Eric's funeral. The funeral itself, I think, went off very well, but you could already see the animosity between the two families. It's contentious. Oh, the funeral was incredibly uncomfortable. Corey stood in one, and then his family stood in like another area. Yeah, it was a very obvious divide immediately, and they wouldn't talk to each other. There really wasn't much reference to Corey. There wasn't a lot of love going on. Over the top, lavish casket. It was like a horse and buggy. It was grand. It was very country. It was just the most uncomfortable funeral I've ever been at. His 40th birthday was just a couple weeks after the funeral. Like his, clothes had already been taken down, and she wasn't wearing a wedding ring. And I thought that was a little odd. I mean, it wasn't even a month. As the months passed, Corey filed a civil lawsuit against Eric's sister, Katie, disputing the trust. And Corey seems to continue to adjust to life as a single mother and a businesswoman. Corey talks a lot about how important routine is to getting through the process of grief. And so, you know, usually at nighttime, this is when you read to your children. And she was saying that they looked for something to read. They would answer some of these questions, and she found nothing. She said, "I have looked everywhere, and I can't find a book on grieving for children." She said, "I wonder if I could write one." Corey Richins self-published a book called Are You With Me? The first part of the book is actually written from the child's perspective. The little boy who's wondering if his dad is with him. Corey actually used a ghostwriter in order to create this book. Are you at my soccer game when I scored that goal for you? I looked for you in the crowd, but you weren't there. Did you see it? And then later on in the book, it switches to the deceased father's perspective. And he sort of starts saying, yes, I am with you. I am with you when you scored that goal for me. You couldn't hear me cheer for you, but I yelled and clapped as loud as I could, just like always. Corey dedicates the book to my amazing husband and a wonderful father. And then there is a drawing of the family of 5. You see Corey and Eric, together with their 3 children and the dog. I will forever love you, my sweet baby, until we see each other again. Yes, I am with you. In March 2023, Corey Richens goes on. These local radio and TV stations talking about the book. We got an email, wrote into the station. It was Corey saying that she had just written what she believed to be was the first book for kids about coping with grief, and that she would love the chance to share that on Good Things Utah. My kids and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced last year. And to make sense and process, I'm sure. Yes, exactly. What a shock. This must be for this poor woman. My heart went out to her. I'm new to all of this. So, kind of doing, research and reading books and things to try and understand, not only how to grieve as a widow, as a wife, but also, with my kids, how to help them understand what just happened. But the big shock happened a couple of days later when we get an anonymous email, and there's just one line, and it's in all capital letters with many exclamation marks at the end. And it says, she killed her husband. Corey, thank you. While Corey has moved on with her life and is promoting her children's book about coping with grief, authorities have been digging into the circumstances surrounding Eric's death. Were you first on today? We were second, and there was blood before you leave. A little bit coming out as soon as we start doing compressions. Originally, it was one of the EMTs on scene who suggests that maybe Eric had an aneurysm. I wonder if he had an aneurysm or something with all the blood. And I think that made a lot of sense to the family on scene right then, because what else would it be that would make a healthy 39-year-old man all of a sudden stop breathing in the middle of the night? So law enforcement says that there will be an autopsy. They think it might have been an aneurysm, but they don't know. For the people that knew Eric, the autopsy was absolutely shocking. The initial autopsy report comes back, and it's drug intoxication fentanyl as the cause of death. 5 times he announced a fentanyl that could kill anyone. Eric did not do drugs, not to my understanding, and Corey was saying the same thing. So it was just baffling. They also found that it was not medical grade fentanyl. So this is nothing that was prescribed by a doctor. This would have been, drugs off the street, the type of drugs that you would procure on a corner and don't necessarily know the origins of. The autopsy report jumpstarts a criminal investigation because this is not a natural death. This is either an accident of the overdose or someone killed Eric. Now police officers realize they have to find the origin of the drug. Police get a search warrant to search the Richens' home for illegal drugs. Investigators go, and they seize Corey's electronics, Eric's electronics, and they search the house for anything that could possibly have traces of fentanyl. But they don't find any fentanyl. During this search, Corey is stopped by then, led Detective Jamie Woody, and at that moment, Corey says what everybody else is, saying that Eric doesn't do drugs, that she's shocked by the cause of death. Corey Richens talks to the chief medical examiner and essentially has a bunch of questions, and she goes down a list of the various items that were found in the stomach contents. The third one, the acetyl, I don't know how you say that. Acetylfentanyl. That's just a variant of fentanyl that is usually only present in the setting of illicitly manufactured fentanyl. Illicitly manufactured, like a pharmacy? No, like fentanyl that's manufactured by drug cartels as opposed to by pharmaceutical companies. Oh, good Lord. It's pretty clear she's kind of reading from the report and asking individual questions about each part. I was just trying to figure out, if we found out anything new. Definitely death from fentanyl. Intoxication. And we still don't know how he got it into him. Yeah. Is that anything you could ever find out? When the toxicology report comes back, Eric's family comes forward to law enforcement and says, well, we have some concerns about the toxicology report. Eric didn't do drugs. The Richens family was immediately suspicious that Corey had a role in Eric's death. According to Eric's family, while it seemed like Corey and Eric were flying high when he died, it was a very different reality. Eric discovered actually in 2020 that Corey had taken out a loan to help her business and did so without telling him. Corey had taken out a $150,000 line of credit against the home, which Eric solely owned and had no idea about, that made them all start to be very concerned with Corey's financial situation. And that is actually what caused him to change the trust, because he wanted to make sure his children were taken care of. The family says that when Eric finds out, he visits a divorce attorney. I think it's like, how can you deceive your spouse like that when you own a home? The idea that you're going to take out a line of credit, that they're never going to realize this, and you're somehow going to go out and spend $250,000, and they're just never going to get that that's what was going on behind the scenes. It's pretty shocking. They end up going to counseling, and they do not separate. But there is this idea, she's lied about their finances. Even if there's a facade of things being good within the marriage, there's still a real permanent rift between the couple and the trust that's been broken there But as it turns out, allegations of financial crimes are not the only evidence. Investigators are uncovering. A year after Eric's death, Corey's finances are not looking good at all. She thought she was going to be getting an inheritance, and now the weight of her debt is bearing down on her. She owes a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars. It was hard for her that year, financially and emotionally. Her kids, were crying at night because their dad is gone. And she has Eric's family who are blaming her for his death. Emotionally, she kind of seemed like she's hanging on by a thread. Corey was also trying to run this business that she was doing, and she just seemed really stressed out. One of Corey's biggest financial burdens was this mansion she had purchased, a luxurious piece of property on the most beautiful land. She buys it for close to $3 million. But at this point, the mansion is far from finished. Corey Richins commissioned this YouTube video of the house construction. It even included a virtual view of the planned luxe amenities. Corey had talked about turning the Midway Mansion into an event space where people could have weddings. It needed a lot of work, estimated to be a couple million. Corey is allegedly making all of this work through hard money loans. And these are loans that are short-term. They cost more. They tend to be riskier. But Corey didn't have money from Eric's estate to help, and eventually lost the mansion to foreclosure. The fallout from Corey's financial strain allegedly ends up harming one of her best friends, a woman named Chelsea Barney. Corey's been helping her best friend buy a home, her first home. So she says, "Look, I'll get the loan. You'll sign the deed. The home will be yours, and you can pay the mortgage each month." She was a waitress and a manager at a restaurant, and she had saved all of her tip money. For years, she gave Corey $45,000 as a down payment. She was always on time with her payment. And so when all of a sudden she was getting notices that her home might be in trouble, she called and asked for a copy of the deed. Essentially, Chelsea had found out that the deed was never properly filed with the county. She never was the owner of the home. The house is foreclosed on. Chelsea and her family are evicted. And to add insult to injury, all this money she saved up to buy this home, it's gone. And there's another family who also say their dealings with Corey did not end well. We just bought a house. Taryn and Alec write by this home for their family. It's been remodeled. There's a view of the mountains. But once they were in that home, they discovered a major problem. They claim they find mold in the walls, and they say there was water coming in and that. Everyone in the family got sick. Nosebleeds, asthma, really unpleasant stuff. Corey denied that she had any knowledge of any problems with the home and that. The home had been inspected prior to their closing on it. The Wrights filed a lawsuit and told 2020 they lost their house to foreclosure. saying they've been financially ruined by the cost of a long-term temporary rental while still paying for that home. Meanwhile, there are people who are starting to say out loud what only a few knew, that Eric had gotten ill in the past, and he suspected Corey was behind it. Eric and Corey were on a trip to Greece in 2019. They're out, having dinner one night, and everyone is ordering drinks. Eric had just recently got Lyme's disease from a hunting trip. He's taking medication for it. On that medication, you're not allowed to have alcohol. It'll make you very, very sick. Eric ordered a virgin drink. When they brought it over, he tasted it and said that he thought that there was alcohol in it. He started not feeling well, and they ran up to the hotel room. He called his sister Katie and told her that he thought that Corey had tried to poison him. I don't believe Eric said that. I don't believe he ever said that. They were in a restaurant when he got sick, so the only one serving him was a waitress. Then, actually on Valentine's Day of 2022, so only weeks before his death, Corey had ordered a sandwich from a local diner. The server entered the phone and then took out order was placed a Bald Mountain bagel sandwich, which is just a toasted bagel with bacon, egg, and cheese, avocado, and sliced tomato. And 12 minutes later, Corey came in and picked it up and paid for it. When she left the sandwich for him, she left a note, basically just saying, "Happy Valentine's Day. I love you." After just a single bite, Eric seemed to believe he was having an allergic reaction. He used his son's EpiPen, took some Benadryl, and went to sleep. And when he woke up, he texted friends, "You almost lost me this time. I think she might have poisoned me." Corey came to me about a year after she said her husband had died. All she had said was that he passed away and she was ready for some new family photos. So, she wanted to get her hair done to look cute in the pictures with her sons. I was really impressed with how she was handling that situation with her little boys and how much she was doing with her life. Corey spent 5 or 6 hours in my chair. We did a full color on her, and then we did her extension install after that. I think she ended up spending around $2,900. It's been a year since Eric Richen's death, and Corey is moving on with life. But Eric's family, however, is frustrated. They say they're not seeing progress in the investigation, and they're dealing with the back and forth lawsuits over the estate. So they decide to hire a private investigator. This PI pulls phone records, looks at thousands of texts, messages, pulls electronics, gets cell phone data. So when the private investigator gets into these phone records, he discovers that there are essentially 3 people that Corey is communicating with all the time. One is Eric, the other is her mother, and the third person is a woman named Carmen Lauber. This is between the months right before and right after Eric Richens dies. So why is Corey talking to Carmen Lauber? So much? Carmen worked for my sister cleaning houses and cleaning. The fix and flips. Corey would call her and say, "Hey, I need you to go to this address, clean this house. This woman has a checkered past, including a whole bunch of drug stuff." With the information that the private investigators gathered, he's forwarding all of that to the Summit County Sheriff's Office. A new lead detective is put on the case, Detective Jeff O'Driscoll, and his theory is to start over, start fresh. Carmen is in a court-ordered drug program, and Detective O'Driscoll takes the opportunity to search her trash. He finds drug paraphernalia, and that's a violation. Now he's got probable cause to search her home. Not only do they find enough evidence to bring drug charges, they find a gun, and she's not allowed to have one since she's a convicted felon. And they notice something that stops them in their tracks. They're looking at A, wall full of inspirational sayings that she's posted, and they see, taped to A, mirror, a copy of Eric's obituary. At this point, they really zeroed in on Corey as being, the prime suspect to Eric's passing, and they need somebody to kind of connect those dots. Without Carmen, police really didn't have much of a case. So can Carmen tell them if Corey had any connection to the fentanyl. She tells police that not only has Corey asked her to get fentanyl, but she did so on 2 separate occasions. And she even said things like the first batch wasn't strong enough. Carmen explained she got 1 set of drugs sometime in February and then was asked to get stronger stuff and then got another dose of drug the second time around. So Carmen's facing prosecution and years of prison time, years to life, for drug charges and gun charges. She's going to tell the cops whatever they want to hear, and they're making a plea deal. Carmen says her dealer was Robert Crozier. He's already in custody for other drug crimes, and he's also detoxing. He says that he and Carmen would meet at a gas station where he would sell her the drugs. Carmen says she would hide the drugs at one of the houses Corey was trying to flip. Crozier says it wasn't a regular thing. It's not just the drug sales themselves, it's the timing. There were 30 texts, messages exchanged between Carmen and Corey on Valentine's Day 2000. 22, the day of that infamous sandwich. And the other day is February 26th, which is right before Eric's death. Now law enforcement has the drug link through Carmen, and they have the financial information. Corey Richens was in massive debt. She was trying to funnel money back into her own real estate and house flipping business. You add this all up, and it's finally enough for police to make their move. A woman who wrote a children's book about grief after the death of her husband now faces charges for his murder. Corey Richens is charged with 1 count of aggravated murder and 3 counts of possession of narcotics with intention to distribute. I woke up in the morning to headlines of Utah mom and children's grief book. Author arrested and charged with murder. It was shocking. It was unbelievable. I just couldn't fathom it. Like not Corey. You know why? Why her? Like it just became this huge story because she wrote that children's book. They're trying to ruin and convict an innocent mother. The simplest answer is, often the correct one is most likely an accidental overdose. I will take it to my grave that Corey did not do this. I too believe it's an accidental overdose. For Corey Richens, she's either victim or killer. There is nothing in between. Is she a widow who had lost her husband and the father of her children? Tragically? Or did she plan this all out to get from under some massive debt? In my experience, money and love are two of the most powerful motivators for a murder. Now, police know about the money, and there may be a romantic angle as well. If Corey wasn't with Eric on Valentine's Day, and she wasn't, who was she? With my kids, and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced last year. And to make sense and process, I'm sure. Right now, we have the arrest of a Utah mom who wrote a children's book about grief after her husband's death. She has now been charged with killing him. I'm new to all of this as a widow, as a wife, but also, with my kids. I'm thinking she's just powering through. She's trying her best maybe not to cry, maybe not to get too emotional. Toxicology report found 5 times a lethal dosage of fentanyl in his system. This last page, particularly poignant. I will forever love you, my sweet baby, until we see each other again. Yes, I am with you. Written as though it's in the father's words for their boys. You are an amazing woman, and we thank you for being vulnerable and sharing this and touching the lives of others. Thank you. I really appreciate being here. Thank you, Corey. Thank you. All right, GTU is back with more. State prosecutors say they do have enough evidence against Corey Richens to proceed with a trial. The imminent charge of murder, allegedly at this point, but still, naturally, you're thinking, can I believe what she said? On May 8th, 2023, Corey is arrested and charged with the aggravated murder of her husband, as well as several counts of possession of illicit drugs with the intent to distribute. Finding out was such a shock. I mean, talking about this now, it still blows my mind. This could all very well be the perfect crime. A storybook ending where she thought she couldn't get caught. It's a story that resonates because it's sort of this idea that she's two very different people, Jekyll and Hyde situation. She was so empathetic at first. Glance, and then the story becomes much more sinister. In a June 2023 hearing where Corey is going to find out if she makes bail or not, she appears in street clothes, but she is in shackles. And she has this look of confidence on her face, almost as if she thinks this is still going to go her way. prosecutors call 3 witnesses to testify as to why Corey Richards should not be released pending prosecution. The defendant came to the door and wrote a check from her business for $1,300 for the purchase of the fentanyl. The initial bail hearing had a forensic accountant going into her finances. It went over the phone records and some of her searches on her phone after her husband's death. During the bail hearing, the cell phone expert presented evidence that prosecutors said was a sign of consciousness of guilt. Consciousness of guilt can be virtually anything that a criminal defendant does that is consistent with them understanding that they're guilty. Some of the more interesting internet searches included luxury prisons for the rich in America. Can cops uncover deleted messages iPhone? If someone is poisoned, what does it go down on the death certificate as? And finally, what is a lethal dose of fentanyl? Those internet searches did not come until after Corey had been given a search warrant that was executed on her home. That search warrant laid out that they believed that Eric had died from a lethal dose of fentanyl, that she had murdered him with it. And so, to now say, well, she searched it, so it's a consciousness of guilt. I think it's human nature. Someone hands you something and says, hey, we think you poisoned them with fentanyl. And you're like, I don't even know what a lethal dose of fentanyl is. What do? We Google search. Prosecutors argue that the motivation behind Eric Richins' death is that Corey Richins was in massive debt. Being bad with money does not make you a murderer. The defense makes the argument that the prosecution has no case because they have no way of showing how the drugs ultimately got into Eric's system. They went through the home and they found absolutely no forensic evidence to substantiate their allegation that she must have given Eric fentanyl in this drink. But perhaps the most compelling argument was made by Eric's sister, Amy Richins, during her victim's impact statement. Eric was a family man who always strove to be the absolute best father and husband. I go through the terrible sequence of events. I wonder when he realized he was in mortal danger. This last year has been a living hell for our family. We have watched as Corey has paraded around portraying herself as a grieving widow and victim while trying to profit from the death of my brother. The circumstances of this case weigh soundly against granting pretrial release of any kind. Since Corey was arrested, she's been held in the Summit County Jail. Corey not only has been separated from her children at this point, she lost custody of her children. The state of Utah takes her kids away, even though she's presumed innocent because Utah has a law that allows the court to do that. When one spouse is suspected of causing the death of the other spouse, and it's while she's in jail that authorities make what appears to be a stunning discovery. Deputies did what's called tossing her cell, where they go and they essentially perform a search, and they found a letter that the prosecution believed to be very, very significant in the case. Since her arrest, Corey Richens, the aspiring writer, is being held in Utah Summit County Jail, and she's at it. Again, during a sweep of Corey's cell, an officer uncovers a 4-page letter. At the top of the first page, it says, "Walk the dog," with an exclamation point. And prosecutors argue that this letter is a message for Corey's mother to relay to her brother Ronnie what he needs to say to help get her off. It reads in part, "Here's what I'm thinking, but you have to talk to Ronnie. He would probably have to testify to this. Eric told Ronnie he gets pain pills and fentanyl from Mexico from the workers at the ranch. Reward this however he needs to make the point with Mexico and drugs." Prosecutors say this is evidence of witness tampering, of influencing a person's testimony that could potentially take the stand in her case and providing a story that is alternative to how Eric had gone to Mexico and possibly obtained drugs while there. Of course, that's hugely significant from the perspective of detectives and the prosecution. I mean, she just explained to me that it was some fairy tale book that was loosely based on what's going on, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that makes it very obvious that it's not true. Corey has always maintained that the walk the dog letter was part of a greater manuscript. Not only was it attorney-client communication, it was also attorney work product. Is this damaging? Does she admit that she committed murder in it? Absolutely not. So the question becomes whether a jury will see this, as Corey insists, as a fictional manuscript or further evidence of her guilt. First, with the death of her husband in this children's book, Are You With Me? And now with this 4-page letter, you see Corey writing herself into the plot. Is Corey's own written word that prosecutors keep coming back to as evidence that she is in fact at the center of this. The Camus mom accused of killing her husband and then writing a children's book about grief is facing more criminal charges. So in March 2024, the prosecution amended their complaint to include an allegation of attempted murder. This is the attempted murder charge for the poisoned Valentine's Day sandwich that Eric ate just weeks before his death. Eric supposedly saying that he thinks his wife is trying to poison him. It's absolutely absurd. And the heat is about to be turned up even higher on Corey. With all the media coverage on her case, someone was watching, and that someone reached out to Eric Richens' family, wanting to clear a guilty conscience. That someone is 41-year-old Josh Grossman, who Corey had hired as a handyman at a home that she was renovating. Authorities learned that Grossman and Corey had been carrying on a years-long affair. According to investigators, the lovers texted almost daily. I want you today, every day, not just sexually, but physically mentally every day when I wake up. I do want a future together. So in addition to the financial motive here, we also have a totally separate motive, and that is she's having an affair where she's repeatedly communicating with this man, talking about how much she wants to be with him and how much she loves him. Among the frequent text exchanges in February of 2022, Corey wrote, "If he could just go away and you could just be here, life would be so perfect. I love you." I'll acknowledge the timing of the texts are not ideal. Is this evidence of murder? No. But is it one of those things that may weigh in the back of a juror's mind when they're thinking about how to weigh all this other evidence? I think that absolutely becomes the case. We're following breaking news out of Summit County for you. The judge granted a request from the defense team to withdraw from her case. Suddenly, defense attorney Sky Lozaro withdraws from the case, citing a conflict of interest involving her law firm. And this preliminary hearing is a critical right that every single. Replacing Lozaro is public defender Kathy Nestor and co-counsel Wendy Lewis. Together, the defense attorneys have more than 30 years of experience. Whenever legal counsel changes in a case, this will heavily stall any sort of outcome because now a new attorney has to come on, build a rapport with Corey, and learn the case inside out. In May 2024, just days after her new lawyers are appointed, Corey makes her first public statement in an audio recording released to ABC News. "The world has yet to hear who I really am, what I've really done or what I really didn't do. What I've really done is protect Eric at all costs. What I really didn't do is murder my husband. I could not and would not ever do that to Eric or anyone for that matter. I'm asking the world to give me a chance. And Corey Richins will have that chance in court. While the narcotics charges were dropped, she has pleaded not guilty to the remaining charges, including 2 counts of insurance fraud. One of those charges alleges that Corey took out a life insurance policy on Eric without his knowledge. When you throw in a financial motive, that's big. That's huge. That she needed. Eric Richins dead. That financial motive is massive. It's big. But then you throw in an affair. You throw in a love story. Now you're talking multiple motives. The state first has to prove that he was murdered. That's step 1. And they've got to be able from the jury. I want to know how. You can't just say he died. She was there. It must have been her, because she had an affair. They're going to have a hard time connecting those dots. All eyes on Utah this morning as the Corey Richins murder trial begins. The murder trial of Corey Richins is now underway, nearly 3 years after her arrest. Corey Richins is in court right now for day 1 of that trial. We'll be inside of that courtroom all week, bringing you the latest. I knew that. This trial would be big. I didn't know it was going to be this big. this story just in a quiet community that doesn't have things like this happening is obviously a pretty big deal. This is a small courthouse, sort of off the beaten path in the beautiful mountains of Utah, near Park City, Utah. Most people expect that there will be 12 people on a jury. But in this case, there were 8 jury members, 6 men, 2 women. My name is Laura, and I was the jury foreperson in the Corey Richins murder trial. Before being selected as a juror, I had heard or read just a couple of headlines, but I never really looked at stories. I really knew nothing about the case. Corey looks nervous. She's worried. She doesn't have that same confidence she did a few years ago. While the situation appears tough for Corey, she still has her supporters. I'll be in the courtroom right there with her family, supporting her every second, every minute, every day as long as it takes. She will beat this. Mark my words. All right, we'll now proceed with opening statements. The prosecutor, Brad Bloodworth, is very direct. He gets right to business. In opening statements, the prosecutor had a laundry list of motives as to why Corey would have killed her husband. The evidence will prove that on the day that Eric died, Corey Richins owed over $4.5 million to over 20 different lenders. That Corey Richins was chronically unhappy in her marriage. That Corey Richins murdered Eric for his money and to get a fresh start at life. On the defense side, they start with someone else's voice. Corey's voice. The 911 call she made the night Eric died. Those were the sounds of a wife becoming a widow. The defense urged the jurors to focus on the 6 hours leading up to Eric's death and not the 6 years prior. So those 6 hours, somewhere in that time, Eric Richins died. Somewhere in that time, he ingested a fatal dose of fentanyl. What you're never going to hear is how that fentanyl got inside of him, because there is zero evidence of that. The witnesses that the state started with were powerful. Your Honor, the state calls Katie Richins Benson. They called Eric's sister, Katie, to the stand. You received a phone call about Eric. Yes, it was early in the morning. Who called you? My dad did. What did he say? It's not easy. He was screaming and crying. Eric's not breathing. Eric's not breathing. Sorry, guys. This was the worst day of my life. The state needs to convince the jury that Corey purchased that lethal dose of fentanyl with the intention to kill. When Carmen takes the stand, all eyes are on her. She makes or breaks this case for the state. Please proceed. Thank you, sir. Remember, Carmen Lauber was facing a lot of trouble with the law, but now she's testifying with immunity. She made a deal with prosecutors if she tells the truth about how Corey Richins purchased fentanyl from her. She's pretty much getting an out-of-jail-free pass for her testimony. She comes clean. The first part of her testimony is essentially Carmen Lauber, laying out all of her sins for the entire world. Have you ever sold drugs? Yes. Do you have a criminal history involving drugs? Yes. Carmen became very emotional on the stand. And yes, she was given a deal for her testimony. But if you believe her, she insists that isn't the only reason that she's doing this. She says she's trying to right a wrong for her role in all of this. Did you ask Corey Richins about Eric's death? Yes, I did. What did you ask? I said, please tell me these pills were not for him. When they had mentioned that it was from an overdose that hit hard, only for the fact that if that's what happened, I needed to step up and take accountability of my part in this that happened. And what I was asked for. Defense attorneys love witnesses like Carmen because she has a criminal record. They're going to go after her on her credibility, especially about the drug charges. And you lied about it? Yes. All right. That's what addicts do when you're using. That's true. Addicts lie. All right. Active addicts. Next, the state calls the person they say put those drugs in Carmen's hands. Robert Crozier. Remember, he's the one prosecutors say sold her the fentanyl. That killed Eric. We sold pills in late 2021 and early 2022. Selling Rossi's then, yes. But on cross-examination, the defense points out that he had changed his story and is now saying those pills weren't fentanyl. When you initially agreed with detectives that you might have sold fentanyl, you were high. You were coming down, and you don't remember saying that. Specifically, that's correct. All this testimony was crucial for attempting to piece together the how. But what was really mind-blowing was the why. And that testimony came from Corey's longtime friends. Becky Lloyd is someone that was a friend of Corey and Eric, and someone that ended up working at C and E Masonry. Becky testifies that there was an evening in December during Christmas time that Corey and Becky started talking and having a bit of a heart-to-heart. She talked about how she was feeling trapped. She was feeling like there wasn't an easy way forward out of the marriage. And she said that in many ways, it would be better if he were dead. Corey's lawyers pounce, challenging Becky's memory. A couple of weeks after Eric died, you gave an interview about this conversation. You and Corey had. Yes. And isn't it fair that in that first interview you never mentioned anything about saying it would be better off if Eric was dead? Did you? I don't recall. You don't recall? I don't recall. Okay. Your Honor, the state calls Allie. Stakings. Allie Staking is called to the stand. This is Corey's best friend, someone she's known since middle school. I've known I was going to take the stand for 4 years now, and it's been a nightmare. There was a lot of emotions in walking in the courtroom, and then seeing Corey, it felt like I was about to betray her going on the stand, and I didn't like that feeling. Are you one of her best friends? Yes. Yeah, I was. Yeah. When I was asked on the stand if she was my best friend or not, I don't know, because I'm now learning a completely different side of this person that I knew and loved for the last 20 years. Allie should be a strong witness for the prosecution. They want her to tell the jury about a conversation she had with Eric about that infamous Valentine's Day sandwich, but it sort of backfires on them. He said that he thought that Corey had tried to poison him, but it was more of a funny story. It was like an allergic reaction is what we had thought it was. We were all laughing, and that past laughter has now turned to loss. I wish I could say it was nice to see my friend, but I miss my friend. But things are different now. Having your best friend take the stand is one thing. Your Honor, the state calls Robert Josh Grossman. But when your ex-lover walks into the courtroom, well, that's just a whole other level. Mr. Grossman, do you need a minute or two? I don't know what I need. Please have a seat. Mr. Bloodworth, the state's next witness, please. The most anticipated witness. The state is about to call. It's a bombshell. Your Honor, the state calls Robert Josh Grossman. Josh Grossman is the man that Corey was having an affair with. She said she was in love with him, and he's the one who wrote those text messages to Corey. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter before the court to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, subject to the pains and penalties of perjury? The swearing in of a witness is usually a pretty routine thing in a courtroom, but not this one. While he's being sworn in, they're asking if he's going to be honest. He doesn't know how to answer it. Sir, have a seat for me if you don't mind. I've never seen this moment before where the judge has to explain what he needs to do. Mr. Grossman, do you understand the difference between what's true and what's not true? I do. And then Josh says, okay, I understand. Yes, I'm going to be honest in my answers. And right away, Josh has our attention. Sir, do you know Corey Richards? I do. And why did you move to Utah? To work with her, help her flip houses. Josh is quiet. He has this southern accent. He's a redhead, like Eric. He served in the military, including combat in Iraq. Eric came from an affluent ranching family, and Josh was a man from South Carolina who was essentially couch surfing. She took care of me. I lived for free. She did. She gave me money whenever I needed it. I liked her. So I'd work for free. His body is slouched. He fidgets. During that time that you were romantically involved with Ms. Richards, did you love her? Yes. During that time, did you feel that she loved you? I think she did. So this, of course, gives prosecutors more than just a financial incentive for Eric's death. The prosecution introduced a series of text messages between Josh and Corey. They put them up on the screen for a painfully long period of quiet time. allowing everybody to read them. They were sad. They were very corny at times. He said, I tend to fall head over heels in love with someone. Corey seemed a little less authentic, like she was kind of leading him on. I want to know everything about you. It's part of being in love. There's something specific you want to know. I'll be up all night wondering, babe. The text ranged from poetic confessions of love, almost had like a middle school feeling about it. I love you. I love talking to you, being with you. I don't have that in my marriage. And I really enjoy my relationship and love for you. But you're right. We both know this love triangle can't go on forever. He looks so uncomfortable as the world reads his private text messages. I love you. K kind. O outgoing. U unique. R romantic. I inches away from signing her divorce papers and falling madly in love with her soulmate. Too late. I've already fallen, There's this moment where he starts crying. I'm watching this and wondering, what is the jury thinking right now? We couldn't talk about it. You could see in people's faces, in their eyes, like, oh, that was heartbreaking. Josh presented himself as very sincere and genuine, sad, brokenhearted. It was kind of devastating to watch him on the stand. The court, I think, was very patient with him. Do you need a minute or two? I don't know what I need. Let's just start with that. Why don't we take a 5, pause for a moment. The text between Josh and Corey evolved. Corey sort of suggesting to Josh her dream life, which would be to live with him in the guest home of the Midway Mansion and run a event center together and raise children together. I have a crazy dream. I divorce and come up with millions and millions. We buy Midway and live in guest house and rent out the huge house as a big event. Center, $15,000 a day. Raise some kids, have a little farm. Deal? You see all of these exchanges and they contextualize what that relationship was. And then Corey sends her boyfriend a plea in the form of a text. And that's less than 48 hours before Eric is found dead. She texts roughly, hang in until Friday. Well, what was Friday? Friday was the day Eric Richens died. Life is going to be different. I promise. Can I try Friday? Give me a few days. Hang in there until then. Please. The relationship between Josh and Corey just fizzled out. It was in the weeks. After Eric passed away, he testifies that he and Corey take a drive. They stop and they sit in her car and talk. Josh testified that Corey asked him a very important question, perhaps a very revealing question. What, sir, did she ask? She asked if I had ever killed anybody. And was that specific to killed anybody while serving in Iraq? Right? Did you respond? I did. Did she ask a follow-up question? Yes. Sir, what was that follow-up question? She asked me how it made me feel, or something along those lines. Grossman's dramatic and emotional testimony comes. to a close, and then something utterly mind-blowing unfolds in the courtroom. With the defense team as they are about to present their case. Ms. Lewis, Ms. Nestor, what's the plan? Ready to go. Who's defense counsels? First witness? Could I have just a minute? Yeah, we have a couple of options. Understood. The prosecution's case took 13 days, and the defense's case was expected to go 7 to 10 days. Corey's defense attorneys are whispering, too, each other back and forth, and it seems like they're trying to decide who to call first. But that is not what we got. Your Honor, actually at this time the defense intends to rest. They said they were calling no one and also rested. It was an absolute shock. I was very surprised that there was no defense. So, when the defense rested without presenting any witnesses, my mouth, I think, dropped open. There has to be another side of this story, and we can fill in the little holes. And then when they didn't call anyone, I was shocked. Why would Corey Rickens defense rest without calling anyone? They may believe the prosecution didn't make out their case, that having any witness on the stand wouldn't make sense because they've already won their case. Do you understand that you have the right to testify at trial? Yes, I do. Are you following your attorney's advice and waiving your right to testify at trial? Yes, I am. Prosecution and the defense have presented their closing arguments. Judge Mrazek instructs the jury and courts dismiss. Then on the same day that the trial ends, and just within a few hours, there's word from the court. Okay, I just received some news that a verdict is in. No way. If you feel overcome with emotion, just look down. We cannot have any outward reaction. I told my kids early on that Eric had died, and my kids were devastated. I said along the way, sometimes it looks like Corey might have done it. But, and then my kids would say, well, did she? And I'd say, I don't think so. But it sometimes looks like it. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Corey is innocent. I know my little sister, she loves her boys way too much to take their father away from them. State of Utah versus Corey Rickens. Ms. Rickens is present. After deliberating for just under 3 hours, the jury informs the court. They've come to an agreement. The court is informed that the jury has reached a verdict. Would you please hand the verdict form to the deputy? Ms. Rickens, please stand. Count 1, aggravated murder. We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant, Corey Rickens, is guilty of aggravated murder. Corey Rickens is found guilty on all counts. The entire 3 hours was constant, robust, electrifying discussion. There were some people who were sort of on the fence with some of the elements, like they felt that she was guilty, but maybe the state didn't meet the burden. And so we focused on what some of those issues were. They gave them pause, and then we all discussed at length. And that helped us kind of come to the conclusion and it helped people jump off the fence. To convict a woman of murder was absolutely heartbreaking. Corey's friend, Allie, staking, watched the verdict live online. Guilty. Eric was my friend, too. I didn't choose Corey over Eric, but now I've lost both of them. And she was somebody that meant a lot to me, and her family meant a lot to me. And they meant a lot to me. And it's a loss. Nobody wins in this. After the verdict is read, Eric's family and friends gather outside of the courthouse and embrace each other. What are you feeling? Relief. Justice is served. Justice. For years ago, our family lost the brightest light. Eric is deeply loved and missed every single day. We are grateful to everyone who has worked tirelessly to bring justice for Eric. Our focus is now on honoring Eric's life and supporting his boys as we all continue to heal. Thank you all for being here. In a statement to ABC News, the Richens family wrote that the justice system has now fairly run its course, and we believe the jury's verdict was just and accurate. There's a hole in our family that cannot be filled. But now, at least we have definitive closure. Corey Richens will return to that courtroom to learn her sentence on May 13th, which is no ordinary day. That would have been Eric Richens' 44th birthday. She faces up to life in prison, and her legal troubles are far from over. She's facing a whole other criminal indictment with multiple counts of mortgage fraud, money laundering, forgery, bad checks. These are serious allegations. One of the real tragedies in this case is Eric and Corey's kids. Their father tragically passed away. Their mother's parental rights have been terminated. She has forever lost her children. Those children have been adopted by one of Eric's sisters. There are 3 little boys at the heart of this. They're just love. They have a lot of love surrounding them. They're great boys, and they're going to be fine. He was an amazing father, brother, son, nephew, person, friend. He was an amazing person with the most contagious laugh out there. I'll remember Eric's laugh if I can hear it in my head. He needs to be remembered as just a loving dad. He had so much more life to live, and he wanted so much for his boys. I'm going to remember just how much he loved them. And that's our program for tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm David Muir, and I'm Deborah Roberts. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night. Start of file text/plane. It's hard to talk about that day because when I look back, I just think about the tragedy. 911, address of your emergency? Yeah, we have a missing person. The woman who owns the property where the wedding guests are staying is nowhere to be found. I had her neighbor go over there to check on her. She said, the door's wide open, the TV's blaring, and you better come over here. It is haunting and chilling in a way that I'll never forget. Did you see anything else strange when you went in the house? Yes, there seems to be blood all over her pillow. There's 20+ guests staying in the big house, and there's a wedding party. The house turned into a crime scene. It's taped off. The police are there. There's helicopters. There's dogs. All of my friends don't know how they're. Getting back to that house. These are all potential suspects in the case. I mean, this is like an Agatha Christie novel, like a classic whodunit. I knew that something really bad had happened, and it wasn't going to be good. The draw for Paso Robles is, of course, the scenery, the layout of a land. The real name of Paso Robles is called El Paso de Robles, which is the pass of the oaks, oak trees, horses, cattle, and then there's the vineyards. The Paso Robles area, it is very much the hot spot of wineries in the county. It's honestly like a fairy tale place to go. I was born and raised in California. I have close family and friends who lived and grew up not far from here. I've always loved this area. Paso Robles, nestled halfway between San Francisco and Los Angeles, a getaway town, scenic and quiet. But down El Faro Road in the middle of all this beauty, something ugly took place. Right here at this secluded vacation home, the owner of this ranch style property was 62-year-old Nancy Woodrum. She lived alone after her husband passed away a few years before, and she was really a fixture in the Paso Robles community and ran a popular salon downtown. We are at Nancy's salon. This is the Strand. This is where I come every 3 weeks to have her do her magic. Nancy clicked with everybody. She just had that amazing gift of just openness, kindness, just generous. And she passed on her amazing gift to her daughter Amanda, who now is my stylist. Do you have a favorite photograph? This one, my mom and I. What makes this photograph so special? We had a special bond. I was her firstborn. And it just really shows that relationship that we had. Sums it all up. How would you describe your mom? What was she like? She liked to have fun. She liked to do things. She was active. We were always doing stuff. Going here, going there with the horses, the animals. She loved riding. It was calming to her. And she loved being out in nature with the horses. You and your mother, you shared this talent for hairdressing, passion for horseback riding, but also, belief in a particular faith. Well, she raised me as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. She had very strong morals and raised me to be a good person. Nancy was always a devout Jehovah's Witness. We believe that the earth will be made new again. And we believe that God created it for a purpose. And He's going to make a beautiful paradise again. Amanda's parents, Robert and Nancy, purchased the property on El Faro Road in 2006. It was a fixer-upper. They were going to have this project and make it their home. But eventually, they decided to turn this property into a vacation rental. My dad was a contractor, and they made it beautiful. They remodeled it and worked really hard on it. So you'd come in, you'd see this 2-story Victorian home with wraparound porches and this willow tree that you parked under. What did Nancy name the property? It was called Paradise Ranch because she had the hope of being in paradise, the hope that the Bible gives us. On Friday, May 4th, this big group of wedding guests check into Paradise Ranch for a weekend wedding at a local winery. The bride who found the place online is staying there with her bridesmaids and some close friends. She asked us not to show her face or reveal her name. We wanted to do a vineyard wedding in Paso Robles. It was a special place to us. Paradise Ranch seemed perfect when we saw the pictures. The main house was very large and welcoming and just charming. And then the guest house was where I was staying, and that was also just very quaint and cute. Nancy came by the guest house and introduced herself. She was very warm and welcoming and gave me a hug, and she was so kind. And she mentioned that she was staying close by on the property. And then on Saturday, May 5th, you received a phone call that concerned you. What did you learn on that call? My mom had not shown up for a Bible study, and that was very unusual. I had our neighbor go over there to check on her. She said the door's wide open, the TV's blaring,